Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Really, we're for the people who want a deeper conversation about the movies we watch today. And tonight, we're not just going to talk about one, not two, not even 10, but 11 movies tonight. That's right, folks. We are going to be talking about... We're going to be talking about all the Oscar Best Picture nominees for 2024. Of course, we do have a winner, but we'll wait for our co-host to tell us who that was. And which movies we think will be remembered. We're also going to do a see it or skip it for another nominee, like one of the Best Picture nominees. We weren't able to cover it before the Oscars, but at the end of this show, we are going to do a see it or skip it for, what the heck was it? Jim, chime in here.
Sure.
What was the other movie?
Am I muted? No.
You are not.
Zone of Interest.
Thank you very much, Jim. We're going to do a see it or skip it of Zone of Interest. And we're also got a great comment a few days ago from one of you fine folks about our Dune podcast. Our Dune 2 podcast we did last weekend. And it was a great comment, and we want to speak to that comment. And I'm also, afterwards, I'm going to chime in on what kind of really bugs me about Dune 2. And so, with that out of the way, let's bring on my borscht bro, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. Look at that.
I won the household Oscar pool yet again. I have other awards, and you can tell this is an award because it says the word award on it.
Well, otherwise, it's sitting on the top of the toilet there. How would you know? I
would like to thank Dollarama of Canada, Inc., for providing these beautiful, or maybe the Party Store, I forget, we bought it a few years ago. But anyway, I won this year. It sort of pays to watch, as I was saying, 9.5 of the 10 movies that were nominated for Best Picture. So, yeah.
You know what, Jim? That's a great segue. Let's talk about one of the pictures we will not be chiming in on. Mm-hmm. And that is Maestro. While it was one of the nominees, it's one that we didn't cover. And how did you put it, Jim? That we were just going to throw it on the pile of...
The Elvis pile.
The Elvis pile, yes. Now, I know this will shock you, Jim. I, of course, have a hot take on why I didn't want to watch Maestro. But why don't you chime in first? Why wasn't it big on your list to even watch?
It's something that I might come around to. I did actually attempt to watch a bit of it last night, but with the time change and everything, I actually, my fault, not the movie's fault, fell asleep about a half an hour in. By the time I woke up, he was looking old and sad. So I thought, we'll just watch it another time. It just sort of didn't register for it. Just because of our schedules and stuff, we have other things to do. We have jobs and stuff. We couldn't fit all in. So I think for us, it was either Zone of Interest or Maestro. We had to sort of decide which one that we covered. And I think we made a good decision with the Zone of Interest. But I'll maybe catch up with. I was actually at his graveside I found it in Brooklyn this past summer. And I got a nice picture of it. Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein. And it's, a good New York movie. So the topic doesn't disinterest me. It wasn't really, I don't think we had a burning desire to see it. And one of them, like Jim, I said, we had to choose.
I had even less than a burning desire. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there.
No.
Here's my quick hot take. I honestly, Jim, I feel like music biopics are damn near the lowest form of cinema. I really just, even though I have some positive memories of Walking the Line,
Yes, yeah, the Johnny
I
Cash one, yeah.
yeah, since then, I've found that they're all very similar,
Mhm.
all pretty much always hagiographic, all controlled by either the family or core friends who have a vested interest in looking good.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, I just have no interest. That said, I may look at this one mostly just to complete the set, I guess.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe both you and I will come back and say, boy, we were really wrong about that Maestro. See why it was nominated. But
You
anyway,
know, and
folks, that's it. What's important here is that's why we will not include it as we talk about what we're doing here. And just to go over what we're doing here, we've got a few questions. And Jim, I I liked yours. What did you message me about again? It was, oh yeah, you go shoot.
well, I was thinking about this uh, while I watched, while I was watching some of them, and I thought,
You can answer the
would
question or
would we even watch would we watch these if they weren't on an Oscar list or other awards lists? And if we wouldn't, which ones would we skip? I think we've partially answered that one already, but yeah,
so
is
the
it that they're nominated that interests us, or is it a genuine
yeah.
interest?
I think actually I like the way you put it in the message. It was, would you watch it if it wasn't nominated?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think that's a great question that we'll ask. We'll kind of go, hey, what ones wouldn't you have watched if they weren't nominated? Or maybe none of them. Maybe you would have watched them all. The other categories, and this is more my thing, is will we still be talking about them in
Mhm.
5 or 10 years? Or well, in one case, I don't even think it's going to make it the next year. But will we really remember it?
Mhm.
Will it be talked about? Will it be something that's still either on the pop culture or on the film landscape in 5 or 10 years? Of course, there's always a risk with making these kind of predictions, whether you're saying probably not, maybe to probably, or hope so, which are kind of the three categories I came up with. All right. With that out of the way, Jim, why don't we start with you? What is, if there is any of these movies where you're like, yeah, no one's remembering this, what would they be?
Yeah, hmm. I'd have to say, I mean, American Fiction got a lot of attention, and you know
We did give it a good initial review.
we did give it a good initial review. It sort of is two movies in one, and I don't think it really wants to know what it wants to be,
Yeah,
either a domestic melodrama or like a searing portrait of cultural movers and shakers. And I think it really sort of it yeah, it sort of tries to parse the middle, and it ultimately does it not as successfully as I think it thinks it does. But maybe that one.
yeah. I agree with you
I
on
don't know.
American Fiction. That was on my probably not
And I
list.
well, and
You
I
know,
wanted to like it, and there's the sort of the optics of well, I mean, it's a largely BODPOC picture, and I love Jeffrey Wright and that kind of thing. But in terms of the juice of the movie itself, I wonder how memorable it'll be. Like if you're asked details, you'll know that it
yeah,
existed. Hey, remember that American Fiction? But it's that sort of like, how did you feel? What was it really about?
yeah.
What was the middle of
Well,
it?
like, I mean, in the end, it's kind of gutted of stakes at the end. And I think
Yeah.
for a movie to be memorable, it needs stakes,
Mhm.
which leads to a movie on my list, Jim, of, you know, probably not going to be remembered. And I feel pretty strongly about this one, Anatomy of a Fall.
Mm.
It has a main character, also a woman who played an excellent role in another movie
Mhm.
that we'll talk about later, that just doesn't do anything. You know, we see everything happen around her, but she doesn't actually drive the action. And so I honestly believe, Jim, this is that's Anatomy of a Fall is a movie that we are not actually going to remember in the long term.
Mhm.
It's going to be one of those ones in a few years you'll have to be reminded of it,
Mhm.
not it kind of poking into your conscience.
Consciousness.
Thank you. Uh, Jim, what do you, first of all, is it on your probably not list?
I had a good experience watching it, so I can't say that we were, it was a family movie night, and we all quite enjoyed it. And we don't often get these family
Again,
movie
not,
nights,
do
so
you think, because we can
yeah,
have a pleasurable, I had a pleasurable
yeah.
experience with American Fiction.
Mhm.
I agree with you. Are we going to remember it? Probably not. And that is the real question I'm asking you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think I will.
Okay.
Yeah, this is yeah.
Okay,
I'll leave it at
cool.
that.
Was there any other movies? I've got a couple more on the probably not list. Do you have any of them on the probably not list? What's your
Well,
next one, if you've got one on that list?
you know what? I don't have many. Maybe past lives. Yeah, yeah, that's a tricky one. I probably American Fiction would be the number
Okay.
one for me. Even one that I didn't like, and I'll mention this one quickly, is Barbie. That we did not that we didn't like it,
Okay. Is it on
but
a probably people won't remember it?
I sort of, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that
Yeah,
one later then.
it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like it's on that part of your
Well,
list.
I was
So
going to say that even movies that you'll remember chunks. I'm Just Ken, for instance, is is
yeah,
that
so
number.
you will
So
remember it. It
yeah,
does have
okay.
an impact.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. For me, Jim, first of all, I think that Slog, the only time people will remember this movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, is when they're doing a retrospective of Martin Scorsese's work, and they'll go, yeah, this is when he really started to make long, boring slogs. You know? And if I do remember it, Jim, it will be in the context of I really wish someone else, or maybe not even wish, I can't wait for somebody else to make a movie about the Osage killings. And
Hmm.
and if I remember that, or if I think of that and I remember this film, it'll strictly be because it wouldn't be Killers of the Flower Moon. Um, and then the other one, and this is not because I didn't enjoy it or anything. I have more appreciation of this film than when we first watched it, but you know what? I think The Holdovers is not going to be remembered. And I don't mean this to slag the movie. I think it's super well done. And it does even some interesting things. And it's got other things going for it on the memory scale. Boy, people love teachers, especially teachers who
Hmm.
sacrifice for students.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking most people will remember if they saw Mr. Holland's Opus, they'll remember it.
Hmm.
And heck, that I can, so, Mr. Holland's Opus, it really, those teacher movies
Yeah.
really lend themselves to memory in a cultural space. Maybe not as great film, but a great piece of pop culture. What's another one? Heck, I can still remember Summer School from the 80s with a
Oh my
young
gosh.
Mark Harmon.
How about Teachers with a lead hit single by 38 Special? Huh? Teacher,
But
teacher, can you
yes,
teach
yes.
me?
I thinking of Mr. Chips, Goodbye Mr. Chips.
Yeah.
A classic of the genre, made and remade. That said, The Holdovers is missing a few things. First of all, it's not a big melodrama with spread out over years or something. The
Mhm.
stakes are relatively low, and yet while he's a teacher who does, you know, in the end, sacrifice for a student, yeah, I don't think it'll have that quite that cultural weight. You
Yeah.
know, like it just doesn't have that ending that you go, boy, that was searing. I got choked up or anything. And this is not to say, Jim, that it isn't a good movie, because it's a very good movie.
Mhm.
Very good. It's just I don't see either crowd like, is it making a big pop culture hit? No. And is it so interesting as a piece of filmmaking? You know, that it subverts,
Yeah.
it challenges the conventional wisdom. It does something really cool in filmmaking, unlike a couple other films. I don't think so. It's very cool. It's almost inside baseball, some of the cool stuff they do.
Mhm.
But yeah, so yeah, that's like The Holdovers, as good a film as it is. I think The Holdovers is one that, might remember in a year, but 5, 10 years, only a real cinephile, you know, will remember it. And even then it'll be, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a good movie. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's a super good question, and as you can tell, I was doing my Sunday afternoon drive, and I was thinking about it, and I just was like, oh my gosh, it's super hard to answer for me. Eh, eh, I think another thing that you layer that you can add to it is all those listers out there. I think Walt just mentioned Walt's here, by the way. Hi, Walt.
Oh, right on,
Uh,
Walt.
he mentioned The Irishman, so all the listers out there are going to be like, where does this, is it going to be for, say, Scorsese? Is it going to be up the list or down the list? This is sort of a
Uh,
new thing for them, new inclusion for them. But yeah, it's a great question. I just I was like thinking about it all day, and like, yeah, trying to estimate
well,
it. But it's funny that notion of what holds in your memory or
what
or not. I still
sticks?
remember,
Yeah.
Don't Look Up, that great last line. We just about had it all, didn't we? And that whether I liked the movie, it wasn't my favorite of the year, but I still remember that line.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's what I think is, this is what I detest, let's say, about lists and rankings. It's like the criteria is always contrived.
mhm.
The uh and they're really not actually answering that interesting a question. Who cares what the ranking is? Even the
What's your
tier
personal
list,
favorite?
which I
Yeah,
find is fun, but it's like,
yeah.
it's who the hell? No one is watching a movie based on somebody's ranking. No one's watching movies based on somebody's, eh, dare I say, shit tier list. You know. Um.
Yeah.
All right. Let me, Jim. What about, let's go into the maybe
Okay.
zone. Is like Killers of the Flower Moon or The Holdovers, are those one of your, hey, this may actually hold?
I think so. I'd say, you have some of the elements of it is that, is the whole the First Nations angle. I mean, it's all First Nations of Killers of the Flower Moon. I think that makes it significant. Is that you've got and while it's told from the point of view of the bad colonizers, still
You know what we need, Jim, in this
yeah,
world is another indigenous story told by a white guy about the
exactly.
white people.
This is Biko all over again.
If only we would
Yeah,
have some more white people making stories about this horrible thing that happened to an indigenous person from, and no worse,
yeah,
from the white criminal's perspective.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's a voice we need.
What is it? Glory, starring Matthew Broderick. But
And at
um,
least Matthew Broderick was kind of on side.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
that's true.
kind of.
Right. Biko starring Kevin Kline. I love these. Uh, yeah. So I mean, in a way, it feels like a sort of a throwing a bone exercise, but at the same time, we know where the Osage Nation is, right? So,
Yeah.
and so that's one element of it that would make it memorable for the holdovers. I've
But
seen,
remember, we're trying to predict,
yeah.
not, hey, these are the things that could make it memorable, but more, is there enough there
Is it or
that
is it
you
not?
think 5 years from now people will still be talking about it?
Well,
Or
here's another one.
10?
I've seen a number of people talk about the holdovers like this is going on my Christmas movies list. So, you know,
Hmm.
that that
Well,
might sort of
that's a
lead.
pretty good maybe,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
So that that's
Yeah.
yeah, it's super tricky though, eh?
And I
Like
would be
what?
happy about that,
Mhm.
honestly, because I do
Yeah.
think it's a very good movie. I just like, I was looking at it from a different perspective. That's a great
Mhm.
note. As a Christmas movie, does it become then that thing that sticks, at least in a pop culture sense?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, and then there's the whole American cable thing that plays the Shawshank Redemption ad infinitum so that it becomes memorable because it's on TV every weekend and everybody now loves it. So who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows
Yeah.
what's happening there?
All right. Well, um, for me on the, I'm gonna move into maybe into probably here.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, on the maybe to probably, like, I mean, I'm gonna throw, this is where Barbie comes in, Jim.
Okay.
The thing with Barbie though is it'll probably be remembered in 5 years or 10 years. I think the real question is how.
Hmm.
Uh, for me, I don't think anyone's going to remember Jim as, oh, this great piece of cinema that really captured the zeitgeist of the time or anything. Um, I just don't think it's that good. I don't think it's a terrible movie or anything, but
Hmm.
it's perfectly fine. Um, what I do think, though, was it was a pop culture phenomenon. And I can imagine a world, Jim, where those tweens who went with their mums and dads,
Hmm.
those younger teens that went with their parents, remembering, looking back 10 years ahead, looking back and going, that was a real special moment with my dad, with my mom, with my friends. We
Hmm.
all got but here's the thing. Even then, is it one of those, yeah, much like a kid or my niece, I remember I took her to a Jonas Brothers concert. Shamelessly
Oh.
exploited the position I had, Jim, at the
Hmm.
time, and got us, like, Uncle Rob, I think he has spinach in his teeth. Like, we were like
Wow,
3 rows from the stage.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I shamelessly exploited the position. Went with
Hmm.
a friend. He took his daughter, and the Jonas Brothers were a pretty, pardon my French, but a pretty big deal at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I, you have to bring it up for you to go, oh yeah, the Jonas Brothers, that was a thing once. And I'm wondering, is that the way it's going to be remembered? Oh my God, that was a thing. Again, 10 years from now, do those mostly young girls as young
Mhm.
women look at the movie and then they kind of go, oh, this does not hold up. But I was young,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, I think Barbie will probably be remembered. Um, Another probably, although maybe even more probable now, probable into, yeah, likely. But I was, even before we started the show, Jim, I was kind of thinking, yeah, well, chances are we're probably going to be talking in 10 years. We're probably still going to be talking about Christopher Nolan. And while I would say Jim Oppenheimer to me isn't his best work, it's still a very good movie by this major filmmaker.
Hmm.
And it has the benefit that it's talking about a historical figure, but
Mhm.
like I don't know if you'd agree with me, Jim, but all history movies are really about what's going on now.
Mhm.
You know, with it, the filmmaker is using it to look at what's going on, at least when the film was being developed,
Yeah.
and but with enough removed that we can still say, well, boy, those people were terrible, not like us.
Mhm.
Or, well, maybe that's about us, but not so much that I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And it's still laudatory. Oh, but Oppenheimer, although he doesn't come out unscathed, is still a hero.
Mhm.
Uh, 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 the United States and that mission. Heck, Groves, that war criminal, comes out good, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that for all those reasons, yeah, it's got a really good chance of people still talking about it in 10 years. Um, but that leads for the same reasons I think that one will be talked about in 10 years. Here's a maybe. And as soon as I can find, oh, there we go. There's the
So
button.
many nominees.
The zone of interest, which shares some, let's say, some DNA with Oppenheimer. If
Mhm.
you let me land that comparison,
Absolutely.
historical, uncomfortable subject. Again, especially what's going on in Gaza,
Mhm.
Palestine, the state of Israel. It's like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Who are these people building walls, keeping the bad stuff that they're doing on the other side of it and enjoying their pleasant, peaceful lives? Um, and so it's got some of that DNA. And Glazer, like he's the guy who did Sexy Beast.
Mhm.
Uh, what was that one? Oh, Scarlett
Under the
Johansson.
Skin.
Thank you. It's this guy is not another auteur.
Mhm.
Not talked about in the same breath as Christopher Nolan, but certainly considered an auteur, of a real film artist.
Mhm.
But what it's missing there is it's not about laudatory people who
No.
have failings. It's way too easy to apply it because of the subject, the historical figures they chose to cover in that film. It is way too easy to apply it to our own lives,
Mhm.
and people don't like that.
No.
And so I get this is one of those things where I could see still maybe, uh, but probably, but maybe, but it's just a maybe. It is a very good film, one I look forward to doing a deep dive with you. But
Yeah.
for those things that Oppenheimer has and this one doesn't, it's like, it's only a maybe. What do you think? What do you think about the three films? You're talking about Barbie. Let's start
Mhm.
with that. Let's go back to Barbie, Jim.
Yeah, I
I
think,
kind of cut you off there because
no, 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 that was, I was getting a little ahead of myself. I think when you look back, what you get out of it, in terms of memory, is the joy of the sort of the Barbie land scenes, and the that sort of just the craziness of the production design, and that civil war on the beach, and the big musical number "I'm Just Ken," and so those are the things that you remember, not so much the sort of more didactic things when she comes to our world, and even the sort of Will Ferrell sequences, and some of the more kind of on the nose stuff. um yeah, it wasn't the subtlest of movies, but I think when it was more in that sort of dreamland, I think that's what made it more memorable. And it was a heck of an Oscar. It was one of the best musical numbers. that I've ever seen on the Oscars. Of course, Ryan Gosling stood up from his seat and started to sing it, and was joined on stage by
Really?
Slash from Guns N' Roses, and then the entire cast,
Of course.
including all the other Kens like Simu Liu and a few others. So, oh Canada. But anyhow, it was great fun, and I think that's what you'll sort of take away from it, even if you sort of didn't sort of love the entire rest of the movie. The with I sort of wonder about the zone of interest. I think of a very particular. It's A24. That's not always everyone's cup of tea, and I think it's got a sort of a limited audience. Yeah, it's very specific. It looks cold and distant, and it is, and that
I mean,
it doesn't always attract people, um,
well,
to watch it. So in terms of memorability and sticking in the sort of the craw of the culture, are enough people? Is there a sort of a big enough take, are there going to be enough people that
yeah,
actually see it?
yeah.
I'm glad I saw it, but yeah, I sort of wonder about that, because ultimately you do have to have people watching these movies in order to create some sort of like public perception of it.
Yeah. And while you and I, Jim, we certainly focus more on story, the narrative, and the meaning of it.
Hmm.
I think on this memorability thing, this idea, I think we do have to kind of bring in that aspect of, oh, I'm going to say, not aesthetic. I don't mean tone,
Yeah.
but let's say flourish, filmmaking craft flourish.
Hmm.
And you're right. The with let's say Anatomy of a Fall uses a similar kind of shooting style, sort of
Hmm.
removed, and it's not very obvious.
Hmm.
It's not, look at me directing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in our memories, we love it when we know that the director is doing the directing thing.
Hmm.
Nolan, it's all. You can't talk about a Nolan film without talking about Christopher Nolan.
Hmm.
You know, uh,
Yeah.
even though Glazer, I think, is, yeah, there's an auteur, but
Hmm.
then we're going to talk about Yorgos, I'm sure, and Poor
Yeah.
Things, and there's another, geez, I wonder who made this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Jim,
Hmm.
we've got chats hopping.
Yeah.
Walt 65, great to see you here, sir. And of course, our good friend, Dragon Movie Guy. There's some reference to, oh, look at this, My Little Pony. And apparently, Walt
Yeah. I
65
saw that.
gave Barbie 15 minutes. Well made, but apparently, Walt,
Yeah.
a retiree, was not in the target market.
Yeah, well, good for you to try it. That's but yeah, it's probably not for everyone.
Yeah. Um, Oh, but he does. This is interesting. Walt 65 says he liked the holdovers, but asking us, did we buy the transition from proper teacher to swearing teacher? It was a bit forced to be a classic. I totally bought it. I never
Yeah.
thought his character wasn't this guy. I think just in this context, we saw another facet of him, but I thought that was unified. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think we were watching the last, from the start it would have been the last few days of his life at that school. Spoiler alert, sorry. And that, why not? He sort of suffered these people for a long time, and I think I did see him sort of, he was not at the end of his rope necessarily, but he was kind of done. I think he,
Well,
maybe a 3/4 life crisis, or I'm not sure how old Giamatti was, or Professor Hold'em,
Yeah.
or what his character's name
Yeah.
was. But yeah, I felt it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the dramatic, not a dram, no, well, not a, well, maybe a dramatic irony. One of the ironies of the film, purposeful ironies that advances or is part of the story, is this idea of a Barton man wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And this guy discovering, maybe he's no, first of all, him discovering, Professor Hunnam, Paul,
Hunnam.
discovering that maybe a Barton man isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and that it's time to, much like he's got to let go of a lot of things, but this kind of, to a degree, shit idea of what a Barton man is, that's part of what he needs to let go, what he needs to shed. But great comment. Thanks very much, Walt. Okay. It's also, Walt also feels, boy, Walt's coming with all the opinions. He
Oh, it's
feels
good. It's great.
it was a mistake going from 5 to 10 nominees. Jim, what do you think? What do you think about that, Jim? Hot or not take?
It seems a bit trying to spread yourself a little thin. I mean, did some of these really have a chance of, I'm just looking at the list now. Did Past Lives, for instance, is as good as it was, did it have a chance of cracking that, best movie, being the ones that walked away with it? I'm not sure. At the same time, this is all about promotion, right? And
Yeah.
you're promoting more movies. What I don't understand is when they have 9 movies in a year. Like, really, you couldn't find a 10th? But that, yeah,
Well, especially like, come on, there is a couple of these movies where it's like, we're not going to remember that in a year.
yeah.
We aren't.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's an award show. They have the Golden Globes that has different categories for drama and then different categories for comedy and musical. So you end up with, I don't know, 40 people nominated in various positions. So, yeah, it's
for myself, Jim. Well, first of all, I'll refer to the thumbnail. Who the hell? Wait, just a sec. I think this deserves. Who cares?
There we go.
Yeah, Jim, Walt, 5, 10, 105. Do we need, how many NHL teams are there? Do we need that many? It's a movie awards show. It's got to be about one of the least important things on the planet. One that literally had, wasn't last year, was it the year before? One man assault.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
TMC. So 5, 10. I on one level, I don't care. I am now going to talk out of the other side of my mouth briefly.
It's more channel, bud, damn it.
No. Sure. One of the positive things about this whole ridiculous exercise is that we do end up watching films that I otherwise would not watch. And so if the list is 10, and yeah, there's going to be some dreck on it, but I mean, geez, we're already going to be ending up watching a lot of dreck in a year. Another movie or two on top of that,
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'll be perfectly honest, the movies that I wouldn't watch aren't, at least on this list. Well, I already kind of chimed in on Maestro, but I'd be lying, Jim, and to you, DMG, and to you, Walt, I would not, Past Lives would not have been on my list. I wouldn't have watched it. What else? What are some others? Just to answer your question earlier, Jim. Yeah, I wouldn't have watched Past Lives. That wouldn't have been top of mind. Even though, be perfectly honest, I have not, I can't remember the last time I was so both furious and furiously engaged with what the characters were doing on screen,
Mhm.
you know? And what else? Anatomy of a Fall. No, that wouldn't have made it on my list. Not a crime guy and just nothing. And yeah, I watched it. Am I better for it? No. That said, so that's a movie that I wouldn't have watched. I think the others, maybe Zone of Interest, it got put on my radar,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I think there's only a few that I may not have ever watched, and I'm happy about two of them.
Mhm.
You know, and then there was one where I'm like, I'm not watching that. I don't care. They could have
Yeah.
150 or they could have only two, and one of them was Maestro. I go, well, hey, I only have to watch one, and I've
Yeah.
finished my Oscars list.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, for me, I think timeliness is something that enters into it, because yeah, it will go on the pile of movies that I fully intend to watch someday. I still mean to
Yeah,
read Margaret Macmillan's 1919, which came out about 75 years ago. I'm kidding. It was more recent than that, but I still have The Lives of Others on my list, which is, I think, 2008, and I know it's on Hoopla, and I haven't watched it yet. So, you know, maybe something like Zone of Interest would have been sort of put on that nice little pile, that good intentions pile. But it was the
would
Oscars and
that be one of those eat your vegetables?
I don't know if it'd be that, but it would just be like something that I genuinely am interested in. But
Yeah,
you know, other things get, you know, you're like, ooh, look, a serial killer movie or something. You know, you get distracted by the shiny thing, like a little
yeah,
magpie. You know, you're like, ooh, look at that. But
and sometimes the easy thing,
yes, the
you know,
easy thing
because
is.
any foreign film you have to sit and watch. There is no looking away, even because you're reading the subtitles.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, and even something like Past Lives is not a film that you can have in the background.
No,
You
no.
know, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, there are times when it's like, oh, I guess another guilty pleasure, another Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or
Yeah,
and when I'm feeling a little more, I would like to eat healthy. Well, Ersatz healthy. The Good Place. You know, that's
yeah,
easy.
yeah.
I've seen them all multiple times. This will really be easy. I can check Facebook and watch. Um, Jim, how about we talk about, and with your permission, I'd like to go first. I want to talk about the movies that you know what? I can't even, I'm not objective enough to be able to say, I think it will, or I think it won't. This is purely, I hope we're still talking about them years from now. They
Sure.
had such an impact on me, at least. And let's go back first. Let's go back to Past Lives.
Mhm.
I want to repeat what I said before. Jim, I have not watched a movie where I have been so engaged by the characters, even as, and I mean it, even as I'm swearing at the television. Sorry, better have my hand on the censor button. Oh, that's shit. Are you kidding me? Really? You're doing that? That's what you're doing. Get your your ass. Woof. Didn't beep it there on time. Like, I was upset with these characters. I was calling them out. If you go back to our deep dive, you'll see I am indignant, righteously indignant about these characters and their behavior. But
Mhm.
I kept watching them. They were compelling to
Yeah.
watch. And while you could say on an external level the stakes are crazy low, but the internal stakes were so high that I rewatched it And it hit me even harder. And I'm like, Jim, I do. I want Past Lives to be in, maybe not pop culture. Yeah, I don't see it becoming a pop culture thing, but that it sort of grows on people who love film and love well-told stories and character-driven stories, to a point where it has that impact on other storytellers, on other filmmakers, on other film students, that in 5-10 years, people are saying, yeah, no, Past Lives raised the bar. Past Lives is
Mhm.
important. I really want that. Will that happen? Probably not. You know, it's it's
Yeah.
a weirdly kind of foreign film. As I complained about on the day, it's got everything I hate about Canadian films, and I'm Canadian. And yet there I am.
Mhm.
And it sparked conversation on our channel with viewers, going, well, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I thought it was great, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I hope so. The other one, and while I think this is a bit more, is when I do my best to be objective, I think, yeah, this has got a chance of lasting. I'm not sure, because it's another one I just loved so fuck fucking much. But
Yeah.
so much. Poor Things.
Yeah.
And yeah, Jim, I don't know about you, but I really hope that Poor Things is something, a film and a star, although apparently she won the Oscar for it, you were saying before in the digital green room,
You did?
but a filmmaker in Yorgos Lanthimos, what's his name? Is it Lanthimos?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
Lanthimos.
thank you. Yorgos and Emma are filmmakers that we're talking about in 10 years, and
Mhm.
this film we're talking about in 10 years. Because as weird as some of his other works have been, it's like this is taking it to a whole new level.
Mhm.
And that's just, what the hell? Sometimes you need a swing for the fence where you go, I think that went over the fence.
Yeah.
You know? Well, I
Yeah.
mean, we'll find out. In a way, this, to carry my baseball analogy, it's still in the air. I'm not actually sure it'll land over the fence. I'm going, oh, it's gone. And there may be
Yeah.
people out there right now going, no, that's see that see that fielder? He's waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? What about
Yeah,
those two
you know,
flicks?
you said an interesting thing the other day off camera, and you sort of said, either something is Lord of the Rings or it's The Hobbit, meaning, one of them's memorable, is going to stick around, and the other one, not so much. And I think that's sort of a good example. Poor Things, I think, yeah, is the
I
one
like the
that I
way you
sort of,
describe it, Jim, because that makes me sound smarter than I remember when I said
oh.
that. Sorry, Poor Things.
No, Poor Things, I think, just is such a visionary kind of piece of work, and it did so well. And I think it won costuming, it won hair and makeup, it won a lot of the sort of the visionary uh, awards. It didn't win score. That went to the Icelandic fellow, but not the one that had that really strange and kind of wonderful score for Poor Things. But I sort of hope that I just, the strength of the vision and the fact that they went for it so hard, I fully applaud and think it deserves to be awarded. So that was, I mean, I did choose Oppenheimer to win the best picture, but yeah. So I think that one. I hope that one will be remembered. But again, I think about the audience, like how many people are, because it is art in a way. It's not Top Gun, right?
Super
It's
European.
super European, super art house cinema.
Yeah.
You're gonna, the students of the world and the people that line up for foreign movies are gonna see it, and I don't know that it would appeal to a
Even
lot of others.
Oppenheimer,
Yeah,
ticket sales, like, I mean, half the reason it did well at the box office is getting those big, expensive seats.
yeah, yeah,
Barbie,
yeah.
more people saw Barbie.
Yeah, it's a
You
weird
know,
thing. I
than a
mean,
number of these films on the top 10 combined,
yeah,
including, I
yeah.
suspect, Oppenheimer.
I was telling somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
You're
telling a younger person that there's a documentary. Somebody was teaching something to at work, and I said something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, there was a documentary on the Helvetica font, like an actual, like a full length movie." And she said, "Oh yeah, how was it?" I said, "I couldn't go because it was sold out." So we're living in a town with an art house cinema that sells out a movie about a font.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that, well, first of all, a tiny art house cinema. I remember that
yeah,
lineup
yeah.
outside
It
our
was during,
Cinematheque,
yeah,
small theater, only a couple of nights. They know how to book.
yeah. I mean, I'm stretching it a bit for the purposes of this illustration, but I mean, yeah, you never know, what's going to appeal to who. But yeah, I like it to have the crowd. I mean, my
Yeah,
family still hasn't seen it yet, and I'd like them to see it. So,
yeah. Well, and there's raises an interesting thing when we're talking about a lot of these lists and memorability,
mhm,
test of
yeah,
time. Let's call it test of time. Unlike a number of films that entered the pop culture memory pre-videotape,
oh,
say Casablanca, we are now at a time when, a film only dies when the rights holder says, I don't want you to see it anymore. I don't want to spend the time for it to be on a hard drive for you to be able to take it down. Like the ability to watch a Poor Things on Disney, is something that wouldn't, if that movie came out even in 1983, it's like its audience would be, whoa.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Um, uh, couple of things Walt's bringing up in the chat here, Jim. Uh, we got to talk about, I'm going to quickly mention Godzilla. What was the award it won?
Special effects,
Yeah,
visual effects.
yeah.
Right
Uh,
here, best visual effects.
yeah. I, Walt, everyone in the chat, everyone out there, Jim and I had a great time watching that flick. And I really look forward to doing a deep dive once it's available on streaming or, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. Once it's available for everyone to watch, because I want to see that again. That was a great film. Uh,
Mhm.
the next question he had is, were we surprised that the favorite actually won? It's like, no, it's that perfect. This is almost like why I'm like, yeah, it isn't his best work. It's accessible, it's friendly, but it makes people feel smart. It's the King's Speech of Christopher Nolan movies. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. There's nothing else on the list that I would think was a competitor, really. What do you think,
Okay.
Jim?
Poor Things, I think, would be up there, just in terms of the strength of its vision.
But
Yeah,
we're talking about the Academy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Not exactly an organization known for this is what we're looking for, the strength of a director's vision. They talk about it a lot.
we'll get him next time. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I mean, if anything, yeah, I would say that probably, uh, yeah, Poor Things are the closest, if anything. But yeah, I wasn't surprised. I think it had enough of an impact. I mean, and keeping in mind it wasn't a late December release, it was Midsummer, and still,
Yeah.
it did as well as it did. So
Mhm. Okay. Um, Jim, is there anything you want to add before we get into a see it or skip it?
no, I think that covers it. Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's let's do a see it or skip it so that
Yeah.
we can
This
say
is
we
a
have covered everyone but Maestro. And that is, where are we here? Oh, right. Eventually the
It's
gizmo
okay.
will crank over. All right, Jim, the
Hmm.
zone of interest. Is it a see it or skip it for you?
For me, it's a see it. I say that like it's a surprise. It's a see it, definite see it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Definite see it for me. And for those of you who are interested, yes, we will be doing a deep dive on it. So we'll save our more fulsome comments for that. But yeah, definitely a see it for me too. All right, Jim, now I think what we need to do is, you know what? We're going to take, folks, we're going to take a 2-minute break
Ooh.
because I need to cue something up because we're going to talk about Dune 2 again. We're back. As is Jim. as we as we continue our Who Cares Oscars 2024 show. But actually, we're going to be talking about a movie that just came out. I suspect it'll be on an Oscars 2025 list, whether you like it or not. And that is
I don't know.
Dune 2. Jim and I got an awesome comment from a viewer, from a subscriber. And yeah, we're gonna bring that up. And Jim just showed up right on time, right when he should. Okay, yes, got an awesome comment, Jim. I'm gonna put that up on the screen now, and I'll read it out. It's from Maya Ruins. Wait, you know what? That deserves a rim shot. There we go. All right, Jim, this is what Maya says. You guys are literally answering your own questions when you walk yourself through the arguments. Where else would you go if you end the second movie on top? You end the third movie with the fall of with the fall of Paul's power and significance. You show the effects of the jihad and his genetic line. You question the entire 1,000-year-old Bene Gesserit program. I think that is an excellent comment, Maya. And yeah, you're not wrong. we do tend in those deep dives, in those over analysis deep dives, to kind of talk in circles. Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
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 That said, I do think at least the way I remember the conversation, Jim, certainly for myself, I was like, I didn't feel like he was like it ended on with him on top, with him totally running
Mhm.
everything, including with, especially with Channing running off. It's like, well, no, there's still business to finish before we can have our triumphant end to set
Yeah.
up our fall. Um, but I could totally see how you'd get a different impression. What do you think, Jim?
About where it's headed, or Maya's
Maya's
comments
comment.
specifically. Yeah, I mean, she is not wrong. You should see the waitress at Denny's when we go eat there, listening into our conversation. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's a certain way, there's a certain Hollywood way to end a trilogy, and I think we may have brought this up. That's not downbeat. Like, how do you? It's a bit of a riddle or a bit of a puzzle. Is if you follow the books directly. I mean, they're not the most triumphant books in the world, but but how do you come to a Hollywood trilogy conclusion with that?
Yeah.
You know,
I you know what? That's a great point, but I'm not sure that that's what Villeneuve is actually trying to deliver is a Hollywood ending. I don't think he is trying that. I
no,
don't think he's being successful in delivering a Dune ending either.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Well, you have to wonder about I mean, we were talking about Barbie earlier. You have to, the binders of notes that Greta Gerwig probably
Mhm.
got. I don't think it would
Yeah.
be the same for Denis Villeneuve, but I think he would
There's
have
still
to
going to be
deal with,
notes.
he still has to fight off
We gave
certain
you
other,
$200
yeah,
million. dollars.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
you know what, Jim, and to you, Maya, as well. I think something to keep in mind to anyone watching our show and now watching this bit on Dune is that our Jim and Rob overanalyze, insert movie name here, really is kind of like the first big conversation. Depending on the flick, we'll maybe Jim and I have already seen it together in a theater, and we'll try and do a right after the movie, usually stereotypically in a Tim Hortons. We will do a see it or skip it review. Just a quick chat. What was our initial reaction? Then, depending on the scale of the movie, we'll do a deep dive, a Jim and Rob will overanalyze it. But that really is still a conversation where we're still kind of working it out. We're a couple of dudes who really love film, but we're trying to figure out, it's not just figuring out the movie we're talking about, but to have a deeper understanding of film and our own emotional and intellectual reaction to it. And
Mhm.
so it's still a conversation. And like a lot of conversations, it can kind of, wait a sec, aren't you arguing the thing you're arguing against?
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the great things about the show and one of the great things about what keeps me and Jim doing this show, because we certainly ain't making any money off of it. It's a net negative. uh, but I don't know about you, Jim, but I feel I've learned so much more uh, about my own opinions and my own feelings about this art form. And
Yeah.
because whether I agree with you or disagree with you, or agree or disagree with other YouTubers, commenters, and that, I just feel like I've gotten so much more of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting when you have to, not have to, but when you're presenting, a film, and talking about it, and you're like, "Ugh, I have to have some things to say about it." I mean, in the past, how many times have you gone to a movie and someone said, "Hey, how was the movie?" You're like, "Ah, it's good." So this is sort of the
Yeah,
opposite of that, is
yeah,
that, geez, I can't just get away with it one, okay, good night, can't just get away with that one line, one word answer. And also, movies are complicated things. They've got
hmm,
several lots going on at the same time. Some of these things work, some of them don't. Some of the ingredients are good ingredients, some of them are bad ingredients. And every movie's a different beast, and it keeps it exciting. I
yeah,
mean, and there's my thing is that there's a hook for every movie. That's why Zone of Interest is in. Uh, was made is because it was a different kind of look at the Holocaust, for instance, that we hadn't seen before.
yeah,
So yeah, it keeps you on your toes, that's for
yeah.
sure.
And yeah, back to Maya's comment. Yeah, you're not wrong, but it's not a bug, but a feature, I think, of the conversation. But I
Yeah.
will say, because of our first reaction, and then your noodle on it, and then we have our conversation, and even what Maya contributed there in a, let me put it back up on the screen briefly. Um, and you noodle, and I can now say, Jim, here, ready to share with you all, everybody on the internet. what really bugs me about Dune 2. And that is not to say that I'm saying skip this movie. Although I will say, yeah, go see it in the theater, pay the extra bucks, because that's where it will look its best. It will not
Mhm.
improve watching at home.
And sound its best.
Yeah. Uh, I have 3 things, Jim, that bug me about Dune 2. Now that I've had some real chance to talk about it and after our conversation, it's first of all, I think the characters are poorly developed or they're just given nothing to do. You know, Stilgar doesn't do a lot in Dune 2. Lady Jessica does a couple of things, but it's not really doing. She's not driving any action. Uh, Paul even is less. He doesn't actually drive a lot of action. He talks some, but he is less. And to a certain degree, although Chani does argue a lot, which is great, some conflict, uh, she doesn't actually drive much action either. Uh, and so that's one item. I think the fact, and these are kind of related, but I'll start with the big one first. There's also, can't believe I'm saying this, when everyone talks about the oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm going to do this. The ins and ins that will die because of the jihad, which they never actually name. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I at the end of the movie, I really don't actually feel any stakes, including the only one that's actually kind of shown to us, which is that affects the main character, the hero, the tragic hero of the piece, Chani running away. He's already said, I've seen it, she'll be back. So it's like, okay, none of this means anything then. Nothing matters. I'm being a little hyperbolic here. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the stakes are lessened in this film. And I think one of the reasons that is, and this is my third thing, there are some narrative choices they made that I think were mistakes. He's the Kwisatz Haderach, or actually even something different, because he came early in the Bene Gesserit's program, right? Jim, I think she, or not she, he, I think it was a mistake for Villeneuve and his team to not show us what his fortune telling, his ability to see the future, to be at many places at once, was, and how it was that frustration of him not being able to see clearly a path forward that hurts this movie. Because there's a million ways you could have shown that,
Mm-hmm.
and some kind of vague dreams didn't work for me. The other thing was they never even hinted, whereas in the novel, it's hinted at heavily, although we don't see it until later books. But we don't actually see what he's trying to avoid either, because he wants to avoid the jihad, but he also wants what he wants,
Mm-hmm.
but he also sees a third way that he really doesn't want.
Mm-hmm.
And when he makes his call, because he's looking for clarity, it's really a commitment to not doing that harder thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if we saw that, all of a sudden it solves a couple of things. It just makes him more interesting. Like he's making more choices, driving more of the action. It
Mm-hmm.
also it also gives us an idea of the things he's worried about, and therefore the stakes, because we see the world more through his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I think they could have and should have done is show us what really being a Reverend Mother is, and show us how they're connected to past lives. and show why an adult is the only ones who are allowed to become that, because even they struggle with having that in their mind, all these competing personalities. And they
Mhm.
don't actually. And while in the novel, they can just kind of tell us about it until they get more details later. I mean, it's a novel. They get to do a lot of things a film doesn't get to do. I think they
Mhm.
should have shown that. And I mean, who knows? I don't know why. I don't know if anyone knows why they chose not to have Alia, the sister, born in these movies, like or in the second movie. And I think that would have also been another way to show that experience,
Mhm.
and that they didn't do it. And they're obviously going to, or I shouldn't say obviously, I suspect in the third book, they're just jumping to her as an adult. It's going to be another missed opportunity.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think those three things are what really bugs me about Dune 2. That doesn't mean I'm saying, you know, don't see it.
Hit the
It's not a
road.
skip it,
Yeah.
but I think that's what really bugs me about this movie. And that's why, even though a lot of people are talking about how great it is and all the ratings and I suspect in 5 years, in 10 years, to go back to the theme of our earlier part of the show, you know what? People are going to go, wow, it's sad, has its moments, but
Yeah.
the theater's where it's going to look its best. Once it gets on the home screen and you watch it and you're not owned by that big theater and that big sound and
Mhm.
those overwhelming visuals, you're going to go, wow, I'm not engaged with these characters. And that is, I'm not necessarily looking for your thoughts on that.
Mhm.
I'm just more wanted to make sure that everyone understood what bugs me. What Jim bugs me about Dune 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and I don't think you're coming from a contrarian point of view, just being like, this is so popular, I'm gonna dump on it. I
As you
don't think
said
it's that.
before, I show my work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And both of us, we go into most movies, I think, and we saw this one in the theater, obviously. We go into most movies hoping that it's good. And for me, if I don't like something, I don't, I'm maybe not immediately able to elaborate on it or articulate it. It's like I didn't like it. Why not? And then I figure it out and I sort of put the things in place. And I think
Yes.
that's what it is. And I've learned many times, just to go, not everybody has to like everything, even if it's wildly popular. You have good arguments for it. There was another review I read by David Ehrlich, who is, I didn't tell you, I think he's that guy that puts together those great year-end packages with the music of the montages of
Yeah.
his 20 or 25 favorite movies. Just heartbreaking 20-minute videos. You have to watch these things. But yeah, he came out and he had uh, criticisms of it,
Yeah.
story criticisms and mechanics, mechanics of story and that sort of thing. So,
I will,
it
if I remember. I'll
yeah,
remember. I'll put a
sure.
link. Actually, we had a previous commenter from a video we had a couple of years ago where he's like, well, where's the link to the piece? Like,
Oh, really?
oh, I'm
Oh, okay.
sorry. It's in the
That's interesting.
description, but here you go.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
sorry I interrupted, Jim.
But yeah, no, it's uh, yeah, it's good to have a variety of opinions. I suspect myself, I was probably and when I see it a second time, I think I'll be in sort of a better place. It's such an overwhelming cinematic experience that I can sort of understand that you're just like, yeah, plot schmott. Let's see some more worms. The the sequence, the sequences.
Yep.
The set pieces. And I hate the word set pieces. It sort of implies something that's been brought in from outside and dropped in the middle. And I don't love that word, but I'll just use it for now. Is that those thing? There's about four of them four big important sort of events or sequences that are really well done. And you know, I think you can be over, especially in the cinema.
Yeah.
It's a chair rattling movie, and it's fun too. It's, you know, it's great
There's still
fun,
some
but
great moments.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah. Is it sound and fury signifying nothing? I don't know if I'd go that far at this point, but yeah, this is definitely, I would like
Uh,
to see it a second time,
yeah.
so I can sort of sit back and more clinically
Well,
determine, you know, if I think it's working or
well,
not.
and a movie like this is one of the toughest. There is,
Mm,
well, that was bad.
yeah.
Let us count the ways.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking of, oh, since we're on the subject, Da Five Bloods.
Yeah.
That was easy to go. And really, what the was everyone talking about? This is not a good movie.
Hmm.
And there's a movie no one talks about anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one. um, and then there's the truly great, or even that was a lot of fun. It's easy. It's the one where it's like, that's pretty good, and it has some moments.
Hmm.
What's going on here? Why am I not crazy ass enthused?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing, I think, Maya, to everyone out there, Jim and I, we do our best. We're not fanboys. We have no skin in the game. You can tell, even earlier, I was able to kind of say, you know what, poor things, past lives. I hope it's remembered, but I'm
Hmm.
so, I love those films so much. I get that my objectivity may not be perfect, but I still think I can defend my choice there. Uh,
Hmm.
and Argyle, yeah, that's not going to be one of Matthew Vaughn's greatest. I got a soft spot for his nonsense, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a film like this, where you're like, I hold this kind of epic, this kind of romantic epic, uh, like an English major referred to it as a romantic epic, and a tragic hero and a filmmaker of this import with the hype and the promise. I hold it to a higher standard.
Hmm.
And so it's like, wow, and plus I mean, Jim, we paid money for this.
Yes. Yeah.
This was not just a pleasurable night at the flicks.
Yeah. No, we didn't get a CD off the back of somebody's truck. You know,
All right, folks. On that note, well, first of all, let's just quickly chime in on the chat. Oh, I promised that we would talk about one more film,
Ooh.
Godzilla -1.
Oh yes.
Oh, I think we did. I think I did. We promised that we would do a deep dive once it was available.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
You know, and then Walt 65 apparently is now making a call for Helvetica the musical. Walt, why don't you get that Kickstarter going? I will contribute. I'd love to see Helvetica the musical. If they can do Mean Girls the musical, why not, Jim? Jim,
Yeah.
why not?
What's the old phrase? Dancing for
Why
architecture.
not? What's that?
The old phrase "dancing for architecture."
All right, everybody. I think that's about it. Although perhaps we should let's see what Luke thought about the show and about our response. Hey, Jim?
What do you think, Luke?
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Yes.
Apparently, he's here to rescue us. It's like, whoa, Luke, it's a little harsh. Jim, DMG, Walt 65, everyone, thanks so much. Please like and subscribe. And over here, oh yeah, ring the bell. And then over here, there'll be some stuff that if you watch or you share the video or something would really help us out. Okay,